One choice. One moment. One love story. Welcome to When He Chose Her. Enjoy the story. She hadn't spoken to anyone in 8 months, until the waitress smiled with her hands. The crystal chandeliers of Whitmore House Restaurant threw warm light across polished marble floors and $1,000 shoes, but none of it could soften the sound of a child in distress. 7-year-old Chloe Whitmore stood in the center of the private dining room with tears on her cheeks, her tiny fists clenched, one designer shoe kicked halfway under a table. 3 untouched plates of truffle pasta sat cooling beside a toppled glass of sparkling water. Around her, executives stared into their napkins. 2 nannies exchanged helpless glances. A pediatric therapist quietly packed her leather briefcase. No one moved fast enough anymore. No one knew how. At the head of the table stood Graham Whitmore, billionaire founder of Whitmore Capital, a man who had built towers, bought companies, and once made a senator wait 40 minutes in his own lobby. Tonight, he looked powerless. His charcoal suit was flawless. His jaw was not. "Chloe," he said carefully, kneeling to her level the way experts had instructed him. "Sweetheart, if you calm down, we can go upstairs and watch your movie." Chloe turned away and covered her ears. "Try the breathing exercise," whispered one nanny. "We did that," muttered the other. "Twice." Graham stood slowly, eyes dark with exhaustion. Since his wife's passing the year before, laughter had disappeared from the house first. Words had followed months later. Chloe still understood everything, doctors said. Trauma worked strangely. She simply no longer trusted the world enough to answer it. And tonight, the world was failing her again. At the edge of the room, balancing a tray of coffee cups, Elena Brooks watched in silence. 29, blonde hair pinned back, black server uniform pressed but modest, she had mastered the invisible art of restaurant work. Refill before asked. Move before noticed. Smile without interrupting wealth. She knew powerful men often preferred their servers quiet. Graham Whitmore had never once looked directly at her in 6 months of private bookings. "Don't just stand there," hissed the floor manager beside her. "Take fresh napkins." Elena nodded, stepped forward, then stopped 3 feet from Chloe. The child's breathing was sharp now, panicked. Her small hands fluttered in confused motions no one around her understood. Elena set the tray down on a side table. She crouched. She did not speak. She simply lifted both hands and signed, slow and gentle. "Hello, Chloe. My name is Elena. I like your sparkly socks." For one suspended second, nothing happened. Then Chloe froze. Her tears paused mid-breath. She looked up, really looked, as if someone had suddenly turned on a light in a locked room. The adults around them stared. Elena tilted her head dramatically and signed again. "Do you think rich people cry louder because they have bigger houses?" Chloe blinked once, then laughed. It was small at first, a surprised burst, like a sound rusty from disuse. Then another. Then a full, bright giggle that bounced off crystal and silver and sent every person in the room into stunned silence. One executive dropped his fork. A nanny covered her mouth. The therapist slowly sat back down. Graham Whitmore did not move at all. He looked at his daughter as if witnessing weather return after a long winter. Chloe stepped closer to Elena and signed back with clumsy enthusiasm. "More joke." Elena widened her eyes theatrically. "Very serious question then. If billionaires are so important, why can't they find their own car keys?" Chloe laughed harder, this time bending at the waist, pointing directly at her father. Even the staff near the doorway struggled not to smile. Graham's ears turned faintly red. "She knows sign language?" whispered someone. "Apparently better than all of us," said another. Elena signed one more question. "Can I fix your napkin crown, Your Majesty?" Chloe nodded solemnly. Elena folded a linen napkin into a crooked little crown and placed it on the girl's head. Chloe beamed. Then, after 8 long months of silence, she reached one hand toward her father and signed 3 clear words. "Sit with us." The room seemed to inhale together. Graham swallowed hard. He had sat in front of world leaders without nerves. Now, his hands shook as he took the chair beside his daughter. Chloe patted the seat next to her for Elena. "Miss Brooks," the manager whispered sharply from across the room, horrified and confused. Graham raised one hand, without looking away from Elena. The room obeyed instantly. "Bring another plate," he said quietly. Then he finally met the waitress's eyes for the first time. They were calm blue-gray, intelligent, unreadable. And no one interrupts her. Elena hesitated. Sir, I'm working. Chloe signed urgently. Stay? Graham glanced at the tiny moving hands, then back at Elena. For the first time in years, the billionaire sounded less like a commander and more like a father asking for help. Please. Elena studied him one measured second, then sat. Outside, Manhattan traffic moved in rivers of light. Inside, a child laughed over a crooked napkin crown while the richest man in the room realized the most valuable person at his table had been carrying coffee the whole time. The private dining room sounded different after laughter had visited it. Silverware moved again. Glasses touched softly. Even the waitstaff walked with lighter steps, as if the air itself had changed weight. Chloe Whitmore sat proudly beneath her crooked linen crown, swinging her feet beneath a chair too large for her, while Elena Brooks signed slow jokes between bites of grilled salmon. Graham Whitmore watched every motion like a man studying a language he should have learned years ago. She likes you, said Dr. Bennett, the therapist, gathering her notes near the doorway. Graham did not look away from the table. She has not liked anyone in months. No, the therapist said quietly. I mean, she trusts her. That word landed harder than profit losses ever had. Trust. Something no acquisition could force and no check could guarantee. Graham reached into the inner pocket of his jacket and removed a slim black checkbook. The room noticed instantly. Men like him had signatures that changed skylines. He placed it on the table and uncapped a fountain pen worth more than most monthly rents. Elena glanced at it, then back to Chloe, continuing to sign. A dramatic fish says thank you for being eaten. Chloe laughed into her napkin. Graham wrote quickly, tore the check free, and slid it across polished wood. Miss Brooks, he said in the tone that had ended boardroom debates for 15 years. For tonight. Elena finally looked down. $50,000. She blinked once, then folded the paper neatly in half. That is too much for dinner service. It is not for dinner service. Graham's voice softened, unfamiliar territory for him. It is for what you did for my daughter. Chloe looked between them, sensing tension. Elena turned the folded check over in her fingers, then set it beside his water glass. Sir, your daughter did the hard part. Take it anyway. No, the word was gentle. It still shocked the room. One executive nearly choked on sparkling water. People did not say no to Graham Whitmore in public. Some did not say it in private either. Graham's expression cooled by habit. Everyone has a price, Miss Brooks. Elena's eyes lifted to his, calm as winter lakes. That sentence is probably why you eat alone. A server dropped 2 forks in the hallway. Chloe covered her mouth, then laughed so hard she nearly slid from her chair. Even Dr. Bennett coughed to hide a smile. Graham stared at Elena. No anger came, only surprise. Then, against all logic, the corner of his mouth moved upward. You are remarkably direct. You are remarkably expensive, she replied. Different skill sets. Chloe pounded the table in delight. Graham leaned back slowly, studying the woman who had just insulted him with perfect posture. Then tell me what you want. Elena turned to Chloe and signed. What do we want from Grumpy Kings? Chloe signed back with enthusiastic hands. Ice cream. Elena nodded. There is your answer. Graham almost laughed. Almost. I mean realistically. So do I. She looked at him steadily. Your daughter needs patience, routine, eye contact, fewer strangers, and one parent who puts away his phone before she has to compete with it. Silence rolled across the room. Graham's phone still rested beside his plate, screen lit with 27 unread messages. He flipped it face down, then powered it off. Several executives looked physically ill. Anything else? He asked. Elena considered. Yes. Stop trying to solve grief like it is a spreadsheet. Dr. Bennett froze mid-zipper with her bag. Graham's jaw tightened, not from anger, but recognition. She had found the locked door and knocked once. Chloe tugged Elena's sleeve and signed another question. Will you come tomorrow? Elena's face softened. I work lunch shift, she signed back. Chloe frowned dramatically and crossed her arms. Graham watched the exchange. What did she say? That my schedule is unacceptable. I agree with her. Graham straightened. Come to the house tomorrow. 4 o'clock. Name your rate. Elena stood, collecting empty plates with practiced grace. I already did. Then I will double it. That is also why you eat alone. This time the laugh escaped him before he could stop it. Deep, brief, rusty from disuse. The room turned toward the sound, as if witnessing a rare bird. Graham Whitmore laughed. Elena lifted the tray. Good night, Mr. Whitmore. Graham. Good night, Mr. Whitmore. She started away. Chloe signed frantically after her. Please come back. Elena paused at the doorway and signed over one shoulder. Maybe. Chloe smiled so brightly the chandeliers seemed unnecessary. Minutes later the room emptied. Executives retreated to waiting cars. Staff whispered in kitchens. Dr. Bennett shook Graham's hand and left with tears she pretended were allergies. Graham remained seated beside his daughter. Do you want to go upstairs? He asked. Chloe shook her head and signed carefully. Want Elena tomorrow. Graham looked toward the door where she had vanished into the city. He had negotiated with oil ministers, union heads, and men who measured mercy in basis points. None had unsettled him like a waitress who refused $50,000 and told him to put away his phone. He looked at Chloe. So do I, he admitted. For the first time in many months, father and daughter stayed at the table long after dinner ended, planning tomorrow. At 6:43 the next morning, Graham Whitmore canceled a meeting that would have moved $80 million before breakfast. His board nearly declared it a national emergency. He did not care. He stood, barefoot in his penthouse kitchen wearing gray sweatpants and a white shirt with one sleeve rolled wrong, staring at a toaster as if it had personally betrayed him. Why is it smoking? He asked. Because, sir, said Mrs. Alvarez, the housekeeper of 12 years, you put in a waffle. Graham removed the blackened square with tongs. Good. Then the machine has learned consequences. Across the marble island, Chloe laughed silently, shoulders bouncing. She wore pajamas printed with yellow stars and held a marker in one hand. In front of her was a legal pad covered with neat block letters. Did you text her? Graham pretended not to see it. Eat your strawberries. Chloe slid the pad closer. Did you text her? I do not text waitresses at 7 in the morning. Mrs. Alvarez raised one eyebrow. You asked me for her schedule at 6:15. Graham adjusted his cuff. Operational curiosity. Chloe grinned and scribbled again. Coward. He looked offended for formality only. Who taught you sarcasm? Mrs. Alvarez pointed at herself proudly. The truth was less elegant than Graham preferred. At midnight, he had asked his assistant to locate Elena Brooks. At 12:07, he had been informed she rented a small walk-up apartment on West 82nd Street, took the subway, and worked lunch shift Tuesday through Saturday at Whitmore House Restaurant. At 12:10, he had hated himself a little for knowing that much. At 12:12, he hated himself more for being relieved she was safe. He glanced at the legal pad again. Chloe had written a third message. Please ask nicely. Graham exhaled. Fine. He picked up his phone, typed 3 words, erased them, typed 7, erased those too. Men who negotiated mergers should not fear punctuation. Finally, he sent, Good morning. Chloe would like to know if you are available at 4 this afternoon. No pressure. Then he stared at the screen like it owed him confidence. No response came. At 7:52, in a 6th-floor apartment with radiator pipes that knocked like old drums, Elena Brooks was brushing flour from her black slacks when her phone buzzed on the counter. She read the message twice, then laughed once to herself. No pressure, she repeated, from the man who probably bills oxygen by the minute. Her roommate, Dana, entered carrying laundry. Who made you smile like that? No one. That is a billionaire text face if I have ever seen one. Elena slid the phone into her bag. It is about a child. That is how all dangerous stories begin. Elena tied her apron strings tighter. She had spent years building a quiet life measured in tips, subway schedules, and customers who forgot her by dessert. Quiet was safe. Quiet did not ask personal questions with expensive eyes. By 10:30 lunch service began in a blur of polished glasses and demanding appetites. Elena moved through tables with her usual precision until the maitre d' approached, pale and nervous. There is a car outside. Many cars exist, Richard. No, I mean one of his cars. Through the front window, a long black sedan waited at the curb like a sentence. A driver stepped out holding an envelope. Half the dining room turned to watch. Richard whispered, Please tell me you are not secretly royalty. If I were, this uniform would be revenge. The driver entered and offered the envelope. Inside was a folded card on heavy cream paper. Miss Brooks, I was advised flowers might be manipulative and cash ineffective. Therefore, I am attempting honesty. Chloe has asked for you every 30 minutes since sunrise. I am also asking for a clock. Please. Graham Elena stared at the card. Richard clutched his chest. He used stationery. That man is serious. Dana, who had arrived early for lunch, snatched the note and read it. Oh no. What? He is learning humility. That is attractive. Elena returned to work, but her focus betrayed her. She nearly delivered iced tea to table 12 twice and called a senator sweetheart by accident. At 3:45, she removed her apron in the locker room. Dana leaned in the doorway. So, are you going? I said maybe. That is woman code for yes with better posture. Elena looked at herself in the small mirror. Simple navy sweater. Clean jeans. Hair tied back. No performance. No armor beyond calm. I am going for Chloe. Dana nodded solemnly. Of course. And I moisturized for civic duty. At 3:58, the sedan door opened for her. The driver said, Good afternoon, Miss Brooks. Do all your passengers feel interrogated by politeness? He smiled. Only the memorable ones. The city rolled past in silver reflections as they headed uptown. Elena watched pedestrians hurry through late afternoon wind, couples argue over coffee, a man walk 3 dogs who clearly controlled him. Ordinary life continued outside tinted glass. Inside, she felt the unusual sensation of stepping towards something instead of away from it. When the car turned through iron gates and climbed the drive to Whitmore Manor, she saw windows blazing gold in the early dusk. At the front doors stood Graham Whitmore in a navy sweater and dark jeans, no tie, no boardroom mask, holding a tray with 2 burned waffles and the expression of a man who knew exactly how ridiculous he looked. Before you judge me, he said as she stepped out. These were made with love. Elena glanced at the smoke curling upward. Then love needs supervision. From somewhere inside the house came Chloe's delighted laughter, already racing toward the door. Chloe Whitmore moved faster than Joy should have been allowed to move. She flew through the front doors in pink socks, launched herself at Elena Brooks, and nearly knocked $1 billion of architecture off balance. Elena laughed and caught her easily. Chloe signed at lightning speed, half grammar, half excitement. You came. I can see that, Elena signed back. Also, your tackling technique needs refinement. Graham stood beside the doorway, still holding the tray of ruined waffles. She has not run toward anyone since last spring. His voice was quiet, almost private. Elena glanced at him, then stopped narrating miracles and let her enjoy one. Mrs. Alvarez appeared behind them with saintly timing. Miss Brooks, welcome. I made edible waffles in case the decorative ones fail. Mutiny, Graham said. Competence, she corrected. The kitchen of Whitmore Manor looked less like a room and more like a magazine that feared fingerprints. Marble counters. Copper pans no one used. Refrigerators larger than some studio apartments. Elena set down her bag and surveyed the space. Does anyone here actually cook? We have chefs, Graham said. That is a no. Chloe climbed onto a stool and signed. Make cookies. Graham frowned. Before dinner? Elena nodded. Especially before dinner. That makes no nutritional sense. Neither do 12 throw pillows in a library. Yet here we are. Chloe laughed so hard she hiccuped. 40 minutes later, the most expensive kitchen in Manhattan wore flour like confetti. Elena tied an apron around Chloe and another around herself. Then she held up a third one with cartoon strawberries. No, Graham stepped back instantly. Absolutely not. Chloe crossed her arms. Elena signed solemnly. House law. Billionaires bake too. There is no such law. Chloe pointed to a sheet of paper Elena had already taped to the refrigerator. In thick marker it read, House Rules 1. Be kind 2. Wash hands 3. No billionaire attitude. Mrs. Alvarez leaned against the doorway, smiling into a dish towel. Seems official to me, sir. 10 minutes later, Graham Whitmore, financial titan, wore the strawberry apron while measuring vanilla under supervision. That is 1 teaspoon, Elena said. You used enough for a swimming pool. I prefer abundance. You prefer not reading directions. Chloe signed, same thing. Graham stared at his daughter in mock betrayal. I am funding your future therapy. Elena mixed dough with practiced hands. She may not need therapy if you keep listening. The room softened for a second. Then smoke rose from the oven. Why is it smoking again? Graham asked. Because, said Elena, opening the door, you preheated a pot holder. I thought it was decorative. Everything in your house is decorative. That is the problem. Chloe bent over the counter laughing soundlessly, shoulders shaking, tears in her eyes for all the right reasons. Later they moved to the sunroom, where late afternoon light poured across chessboards and unopened art books. Chloe built a pillow fort with military ambition. Elena helped with structure. Graham was assigned blanket transport and morale support. I own 3 companies, he muttered, carrying cushions. And yet, Elena said, adjusting a sofa pillow into a wall. Today your greatest achievement is roof stability. He looked at her then, really looked. Without restaurant lighting or uniform, she seemed both younger and more serious. Calm face, clear eyes, hands that moved with confidence whether signing to a child or correcting a man used to command. You are enjoying this entirely too much, he said. I enjoy overdue corrections. Chloe popped out of the fort and signed, movie night inside. Graham checked his watch by reflex. Elena noticed. Do you have somewhere more important to be than your daughter's pillow fortress? I have a conference call at 6. Cancel it. It involves Singapore. Excellent. They can be disappointed internationally. He almost smiled. You give orders comfortably for someone who does not work here. I work wherever nonsense is happening. Chloe raised both thumbs in support. At 6:03, Graham sent a one-line message to his board, Family Matter. Reschedule. Across the world, several executives reconsidered their religion. Inside the fort, a flashlight glowed under blankets while Chloe signed dramatic ghost stories that made no sense and every sense at once. Elena translated with exaggerated seriousness. Graham watched them from the entrance, one shoulder against the wall, as if afraid stepping closer might break the spell. Come in, Elena said without looking up. There is no room. There is if you lose the ego. He removed his shoes and crawled inside, knees protesting wealth. Chloe placed a paper crown on his head. Elena handed him a plastic teacup. Congratulations, she said. You are now assistant princess. This feels legally complicated. Chloe laughed and leaned against his arm. The movement was small. It hit him like thunder. For months, she had tolerated proximity. Tonight she chose it. He swallowed and kept his voice steady. What are my duties? Elena signed to Chloe, then translated. Protect the kingdom. Attend tea. Stop checking your phone. He reached into his pocket, looked at the device once, then handed it to Elena. Take it. Brave choice. She placed it outside the fort like a surrendered weapon. Twilight deepened beyond the glass. The mansion, once polished and silent, now held flour on counters, blankets on furniture, and laughter in the walls. Graham looked around the tiny fabric kingdom and realized something expensive houses rarely understood. Warmth was not purchased. It was invited. Rain tapped softly against the sunroom, glass long after the pillow fort surrendered to bedtime. By 8:30, Chloe was asleep upstairs, one hand curled around the crooked paper crown, the other resting on a stuffed rabbit Elena had found under a sofa cushion. Mrs. Alvarez closed the nursery door with practiced tenderness and whispered. She asked if Miss Brooks comes back tomorrow. Graham stood in the hallway, hands in pockets, looking at the door as if it contained both relief and guilt. What did you tell her? That depends, Mrs. Alvarez said. Will she? Before he could answer, she walked away smiling like a woman who had seen too many rich men learn basic truths late in life. Downstairs, Elena rinsed mixing bowls at the kitchen sink despite repeated instructions from 3 staff members that dishes were beneath her. I wait tables for a living, she said. Ceramic does not intimidate me. Graham entered quietly and leaned against the marble island. He had changed from billionaire command mode into something rarer, a tired father trying to deserve a good evening. You do not need to clean. You do not need 12 kinds of imported salt, but life is generous with extras. He looked at the row of labeled jars. That pink one is from the Himalayas. This one is from aisle 7 and tastes exactly like Boundaries. She handed him a towel. Dry. He obeyed before noticing. You issue orders as if born to it. No, I issue useful ones. They worked in companionable silence for a moment. Rain deepened outside. Somewhere in the house, an antique clock announced 9 o'clock like it expected applause. Graham folded the towel too neatly. Thank you, he said at last. Today meant more than I can explain. Elena nodded once. Then do not explain it. Repeat it. Repeat what? Showing up. He frowned slightly. I am here. She set down a plate and turned to face him fully. Physically? Often. Emotionally. That room echoes. The sentence landed clean and hard. Graham had faced hostile takeovers with less discomfort. You know me one day, he said. I know enough. Her voice remained calm, which somehow made every word sharper. I know your daughter lights up when someone kneels to her eye level because adults usually talk over her. I know she signs faster when excited because no one slows down with her. I know she washed the driveway 3 times in 1 hour, which means people leave often enough to become a pattern. And I know you love her very much. He softened slightly. Then what exactly is your accusation? Neglect by scheduling. That is dramatic. So is a child going silent. He looked away first. Rain traced the windows in silver lines. You think I chose any of this? No, she said gently now. I think grief chose first. Then work volunteered to hide it. The kitchen grew still. Even the refrigerator seemed to hum more quietly. Graham stared at the counter where flowers still dusted the marble like leftover snow. When Lydia died, he said slowly, speaking his late wife's name aloud for the first time in months, everyone needed something from me. Lawyers, reporters, shareholders, doctors, staff. Chloe cried every night, and I could not fix it. Work was the only place where problems still had numbers. Elena listened without interruption. It was a rare gift. And children do not. He gave a hollow smile. Children do not. Neither does sorrow, she said. That is why spreadsheets lose. He laughed once through his nose despite himself. You always talk like fortune cookies with sharper edges. Only to stubborn men. She reached for her coat, draped over a chair. What is Chloe's favorite color? He answered too quickly. Blue. Elena said nothing. Is it not blue? It is yellow. She pointed to 5 yellow things today. He blinked. What song did Lydia sing when Chloe was scared? He opened his mouth, then closed it. What does Chloe hate on sandwiches? Silence. Elena slipped on her coat. You built empires, Graham. But you forgot to study the one person who would have loved you for free. He flinched, not from cruelty, but accuracy. That was unnecessary. No, she said. Softly. Necessary is why I came. She moved toward the front hall. He followed. Will you come tomorrow? Why? Because Chloe needs consistency. Elena picked up her bag. She needs her father. I am trying. Good. Try where she can see it. At the door she paused, then turned back. 4 o'clock tomorrow. No staff. No phones. Just you and Chloe in the kitchen. Doing what? Learning her favorite cookie recipe. I do not bake. You also did not listen yesterday. She opened the door to cool rain-scented air. People improve. He almost smiled. And if I fail, then you burn another waffle and begin again. She stepped onto the porch. Graham called after her. Elena. She looked back. What? Her favorite song was You Are My Sunshine. Elena's expression warmed. Then start there. The door closed behind her. He stood alone in the grand foyer, surrounded by art, stone, and objects chosen by experts. Upstairs, his daughter slept with a paper crown. Downstairs, a waitress had just rearranged his entire house without moving a single wall. At 3:58 the next afternoon, Whitmore Manor smelled like butter, anxiety, and smoke prevention. Graham Whitmore stood in the kitchen wearing the strawberry apron again, this time by choice and with less dignity. A mixing bowl sat before him beside printed recipe cards Mrs. Alvarez had arranged like emergency documents. Chloe perched on a stool, elbows on the counter, watching with the serious expression children reserve for adults attempting simple tasks. 2 cups of flour, Graham read aloud. Leveled cups. Mrs. Alvarez corrected from the doorway. Flour is not real estate. He measured carefully, creating a small white cloud that landed on his sweater. Chloe laughed silently and signed, Snow Billionaire. Mockery from your own child, Graham said. How democratic. At exactly 4 o'clock the side door opened. Elena Brooks entered carrying a paper grocery bag and wearing a camel coat still dusted with winter wind. Chloe slid off the stool and ran to her. Graham noticed that he now recognized the sound of joy even when it made no sound at all. You are late, he said automatically. Elena glanced at the grandfather clock. I am on time. You are early. There is a difference wealthy people often confuse. She set the bag on the counter and surveyed the kitchen. No fires. Rude, Graham said. Impressive, Mrs. Alvarez corrected. Elena removed ingredients one by one. Chocolate chips, brown sugar, vanilla, and a small jar of cinnamon. Secret weapon, she told Chloe. For cookies? Graham asked. For patience. You need both. They began again. Elena stood beside Chloe, guiding her hands through signs for stir, pour, wait, taste. Graham watched closely, repeating each sign with the concentration of a man decoding markets. He got several wrong. At one point, he accidentally signed potato instead of patience. Chloe nearly fell off the stool laughing. "Why is potato funny?" he asked. Elena smiled. "Because you just promised to become a better father through root vegetables." Something warm and unfamiliar moved through the room. 40 minutes later, trays entered the oven without casualties. They waited by the counter drinking milk from mismatched glasses because Elena had declared crystal stemware illegal for cookies. Graham checked no phone because there was no phone. He had locked it in his study drawer at 3:32 and felt both withdrawal and relief. Chloe tugged Elena's sleeve and signed a careful question. "Why no signs?" Elena's smile softened. She glanced at Graham, then back to Chloe. "Because once upon a time," she signed slowly, "I worked with children whose voices lived in different places." Graham leaned against the island, listening. Elena continued aloud now, partly for Chloe, partly because silence had opened the door. "I taught at a communication center downtown. Kids with hearing loss, speech delays, autism, trauma. Some spoke with words, some with hands, some with music, some with none of the above until they trusted you." "You were a teacher," Graham said. "I was many things. Teacher, listener, finger paint hostage." Chloe smiled proudly. "Why did you stop?" The question came gently, but it did not miss. Elena looked toward the oven light, glowing gold through the glass. "Because life changed shape." She chose each word with care. "Someone I trusted made promises he did not keep. The center lost funding. I lost momentum. Mrs. Alvarez quietly found reasons to be elsewhere and disappeared." Graham remained still. He understood money collapsing. He understood contracts. He suddenly understood very little else. "So you became a waitress?" he asked. "I became tired first," Elena said. Then she shrugged lightly. "Restaurants needed help. Bills were fluent in urgency." Chloe reached out and placed one small hand over Elena's. The gesture was simple. It carried more grace than many speeches. The oven timer chimed. Elena blinked once, recovered, and clapped her hands. "Good news. Emotional honesty is over. Cookies are ready." The tray came out fragrant and perfect except for one misshapen lump near the corner. Graham pointed. "That one looks troubled." "That one," Elena said, "is yours." Chloe bit into a warm cookie, eyes widening with delight. Then she looked at Elena, cheeks full, and something gathered behind her lips like courage finding a doorway. "Again," Chloe said softly. The room stopped. One word. Breathy, small, unmistakable. Graham's glass slipped in his hand, but did not fall. Elena crouched to Chloe's level, eyes shining. "Again what, sweetheart?" Chloe swallowed. "Cookie." Graham covered his mouth. For months doctors had promised progress someday. Someday had arrived wearing a sweater and carrying cinnamon. Tears stood in his eyes before pride could stop them. Chloe looked at him and said one more word, clearer this time. "Dad." He knelt so quickly the apron strings snapped. "I am here," he whispered. "I am right here." She touched his face as if confirming he was real. Elena turned away politely, giving privacy the dignity it deserved. Graham looked up at her over Chloe's shoulder. Gratitude was too small a word. "I was closer." "You did this," he said. Elena shook her head. "No, she did. You just finally stayed long enough to hear it." Outside, evening settled over the city in silver light. Inside the kitchen, cookies cooled on racks, flour dusted expensive counters, and a man who could buy almost anything learned the priceless sound of being called father again. 3 weeks later, the calendar at Whitmore Manor looked less like a corporate schedule and more like evidence of recovery. Tuesdays were cookie nights. Thursdays were story nights inside the Pillow Fort, now upgraded with structural beams and battery lanterns. Saturdays belonged to Central Park, where Chloe fed ducks with reckless generosity, and Graham learned that children considered every puddle a moral opportunity. Elena Brooks had become part of the rhythm so naturally that even the house seemed to expect her. Mrs. Alvarez brewed extra coffee at 4 o'clock. The front hall lamp turned on before sunset. Chloe waited by the window with shoes on the wrong feet. Graham told himself it was all for Chloe. Then he found himself shaving twice on days Elena visited and became suspicious of his own logic. On a windy Thursday evening, he stood in his study attempting to learn sign language from instructional videos on a tablet. The presenter smiled professionally while demonstrating family words. Graham copied each movement with intense concentration. Mrs. Alvarez opened the door without knocking, saw him signing grandmother incorrectly, and closed it again to preserve his dignity. "I heard that," he called. "Then I heard nothing," she answered from the hallway. At dinner that night, Chloe signed rapidly about a school art project involving glitter and justice. Graham caught only every third word. Elena watched him struggle, then leaned over and signed more slowly. "You are improving. I know enough to recognize pity," he said. That was encouragement. "From you, those are cousins." Chloe laughed and signed to Elena. "He practiced." Graham froze. "How do you know that?" Chloe pointed toward the study ceiling and mimed exaggerated hand motions. Elena bit her lip to hide a smile. "Your walls are less private than your accountant promised." He cleared his throat. "I believe in skill development." "You believe in impressing a waitress," Mrs. Alvarez said, setting down salad and walking away before retaliation could form. Graham nearly choked on water. Later that week, Whitmore Capital hosted an investor conference in Midtown. Hundreds attended. Screens glowed. Analysts waited. Graham took the stage in a navy suit sharp enough to cut weak arguments. Midway through the presentation, his phone vibrated in his pocket. Normally impossible. Only 3 people had that bypass line. He glanced down. Message from Elena. "Chloe has a school performance at 6. You said maybe. Children here, maybe is no." He looked at the ballroom of executives, then at slide 27 forecasting quarterly expansion. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, closing the remote. "You are all capable adults. Continue networking without me." The chief financial officer nearly fainted. Graham walked off stage to a room full of stunned millionaires and one delighted janitor who started clapping. At 6:05, he slipped into the elementary school auditorium, still wearing cufflinks worth more than the sound system. He found Elena and Chloe backstage, surrounded by cardboard trees and nervous second graders. Chloe wore a paper moon costume and looked terrified. Elena crouched in front of her, signing calm breaths. Graham knelt beside them. "I am here," he said softly. Chloe touched his sleeve, then smiled. During the performance, children forgot lines. One tree fell over voluntarily, and a boy named Mason announced he had to use the restroom in the middle of a song. Graham laughed harder than he had at any gala in years. Chloe stepped to center stage and delivered 2 spoken lines clearly enough that several teachers wiped tears. Afterward, she ran into his arms, moon crown crooked, glitter everywhere. "Did good?" she asked. "You were magnificent," he said. Then he looked at Elena. "You knew I would come." "No," she said. "I hoped you were becoming the kind of man who would." They walked to a diner nearby because Chloe demanded fries shaped like happiness. Rain misted the sidewalks. Neon lights painted the windows pink and blue. Graham sat across from Elena in a booth too small for his posture. "You changed my daughter's life," he said quietly. "Careful," Elena replied. "Compliments from rich men often come with paperwork." Then no paperwork. He hesitated, a rare and human thing. "You changed mine too." She looked down at the menu, though she already knew it by heart. People can change. Themselves, Graham. Others only point at the door. Chloe interrupted by dipping a fry in a milkshake and declaring science successful. They laughed together. On the ride home, Chloe fell asleep in the back seat between them, shoes off, moon crown crushed beside her. The city lights moved across the car like passing constellations. Graham kept his voice low. "There is something I should confess. That you cannot bake? Already public knowledge." He looked ahead, then finally said it. "I almost signed a terrible acquisition today because I was thinking about your smile." Elena turned toward the window to hide her blush. "That may be the most expensive sentence ever caused by my face. It is not the first costly thing about you. Flirting now? Possibly. Awkwardly. I am new at it." She smiled then, small and warm and impossible to buy. In the reflection of the glass, Graham saw a man he barely recognized. Softer around the edges, braver in strange ways. Beside him sat a waitress who spoke with her hands and rearranged lives without asking permission. In the back seat slept the child who had taught them both what mattered enough to hurry home for. The first snow of December arrived sideways, sharp and theatrical, turning Manhattan into a city of blurred lights and impatient umbrellas. Inside Whitmore House Restaurant, Elena Brooks balanced 3 plates on one arm and corrected a tourist pronunciation of gnocchi with the mercy of a saint. The dinner rush moved like weather. Orders shouted. Glasses chimed. Someone at table 9 was offended by parsley. Elena almost enjoyed the chaos. Almost. Because all afternoon her phone had remained heavy in her apron pocket with a message she had read too many times. Nathan Cole, in town for 1 week. Can we talk? Nathan had once been her future. Then he had become the lesson. She had ignored the text, then another, then a third that simply read please. At 7:20, the front doors opened, and Winter walked in wearing a camel coat and regret. Nathan Cole still had the same easy smile, the same polished confidence that used to pass for safety. He spotted Elena immediately. There you are. She set down bread plates. Before answering, that sounded like I was missing. Maybe to me. Then your memory needs better hobbies. He laughed softly, but nerves showed around the edges. Can we talk? I am working. Then after. I am also busy after. He lowered his voice. Elena, please. Across the room, 3 diners looked up because some tensions arrive with their own soundtrack. She exhaled. 10 minutes. Outside. At 8. Nathan nodded with relief. Thank you. He left a business card on the host's stand like old habits never die. At exactly 8, Elena stepped into the alley beside the restaurant where snow gathered on trash lids and made even ugly places gentler. Nathan stood beneath the service awning holding 2 coffees. Still take cream? He asked. Still ask questions you forfeited the right to ask. He set 1 cup down untouched. Fair. Snow collected on his shoulders. You look good. I look employed. He smiled sadly. I deserve that. You deserve several things. Time is short. Nathan rubbed his hands together. I was offered a directorship in Boston. New center. Good funding. Speech and communication programs. I remembered how brilliant you were with those kids. Elena's expression did not move. You remembered after 3 years? I remembered every day. Interesting schedule. He took the hit. I was a coward. I let my parents talk me into the safer path. The wealthier path. I told myself I would come back for you when things settled. People are not coats, Nathan. You do not hang them up for later. Snow thickened between them. I know that now. He stepped closer, careful not to crowd her. Come with me. Start over. You should be teaching, not carrying plates for people who do not deserve you. She almost laughed. You mean men who think money is personality? He winced. I earned that too. Before she could answer, a black sedan turned the corner and stopped harder than elegance preferred. Graham Whitmore stepped out without umbrella, coat unbuttoned, snow catching in his dark hair. He had come straight from a charity gala judging by the tuxedo and the look of a man who had left early on purpose. His eyes moved from Nathan to Elena to the untouched. Coffee. Am I interrupting? Frequently, Elena said, though softly. Nathan straightened. And you are. Complicated, Graham replied. Then to Elena. Chloe had a nightmare. She asked for you. The truth in his voice was immediate and unpolished. Elena's posture changed before she realized it. Nathan noticed everything at once. You came for her, Waitress? Graham's gaze cooled. I came for Elena. Silence. Snow. Steam rising from alley grates. Nathan looked at Elena. Is this what your life is now? Being summoned by billionaires? No, she said calmly. It is being valued by one child. Graham said nothing, which was wise for once. Nathan reached into his coat and handed Elena an envelope. Contract details. Salary. Housing. Real autonomy. Think about it. She accepted it because refusing in the cold felt dramatic. He gave a small sad smile. You always deserved more than what I gave. That part is true. He walked away into the snow, shoulders lower than when he arrived. Graham watched him go. I dislike him instinctively. That is not a virtue. Still accurate. She looked at the envelope in her hand. Boston. A center. Real work. A life she once wanted. Graham saw the conflict and, for the first time in years, did not try to solve it with money. If it is right for you, he said quietly, you should go. She searched his face. Even if Chloe asks me to stay? His jaw tightened. Especially then. They rode in silence to the manor while snow painted the city clean. Upstairs, Chloe slept again before Elena arrived, small hand wrapped around the stuffed rabbit. Elena stood by the bed a long moment. Graham waited in the hallway. She is getting stronger, Elena whispered. Because you helped her. Because you changed too. He leaned against the wall, tired and honest. Then stay. She looked up. For Chloe. He met her eyes and answered with dangerous truth. No. For me. She inhaled sharply. He raised both hands, clumsy but determined, and signed the words he had practiced alone for weeks. Please stay. Not perfect signs. Not graceful. But real. Elena's eyes filled before she could stop them. Then she placed the envelope in his hand. Do not celebrate yet, she said softly. I have not answered. But she did not leave. By morning the snow had settled into clean white edges along every rooftop in Manhattan, the kind of silence that made the city sound thoughtful. Elena Brooks woke before dawn in her small apartment, stared at the Boston contract on the kitchen table, then turned it face down beside a mug of untouched coffee. Opportunity had finally knocked like she once prayed it would. The problem was that another life had quietly entered through a side door first. At 8:15, there was a knock. Dana opened the apartment door and nearly saluted. Mrs. Alvarez stood there holding a bakery box and wearing the expression of a woman delivering destiny before breakfast. Croissants, she announced, and unsolicited wisdom. Elena laughed despite herself and let her in. Mrs. Alvarez set the box down, looked at the contract, then at Elena. Paper confusion. It is a serious offer, Elena said. So is being loved well. Those are rarer. Dana pretended to choke on pastry. Please continue, wise queen. Mrs. Alvarez ignored her. You think this is about choosing a man or a job. It is not. It is about choosing where your gifts grow. She pointed one flour-dusted finger toward Elena. In Boston, they need your skill. In New York, they need your heart and your skill. One difference matters. And Graham? Elena asked carefully. Mrs. Alvarez smiled. That stubborn man has learned to use a sponge, say sorry, and sign please. Miracles come in sets. By noon, Elena stood outside Whitmore Manor with the contract in one hand and winter wind in her hair. The front door opened before she knocked. Chloe launched into her arms wearing yellow mittens and a paper badge reading Cookie Inspector. You look powerful, Elena signed. Chloe nodded solemnly. Very. Inside, the house had changed again. Family photos now sat on tables where abstract sculptures once posed uselessly. Flowers still lived in the kitchen corners. A child's drawings hung on the refrigerator beside quarterly schedules that no one respected anymore. Graham entered carrying 2 mugs of cocoa, then stopped when he saw the envelope. He did not hide the flicker in his face. You came to tell us goodbye, he said quietly. I came to tell you the truth. Chloe looked between them, sensing gravity. Elena knelt and signed to her gently. Can you give us 5 minutes? Chloe considered like a union negotiator, then pointed 2 mittened fingers at Graham. No bad talking. She marched to the sunroom with cocoa and authority. Elena and Graham stood alone in the kitchen where everything important had begun. I read the contract 3 times, she said. Good salary. Beautiful mission. Respectable title. He nodded once. Then you should take it. Stop being noble. It does not suit you. I am trying to deserve disappointment gracefully. She stepped closer. What if I am disappointed too? He looked up slowly. Elena, I wanted a place where my work mattered, she said. Then I met a little girl who found her voice. And a man who found one he should have used years ago. He laughed softly through nerves. I am still clumsy with it. Yes, deeply. She placed the contract on the counter and tore it cleanly in half. Then again, Graham stared. That was legally dramatic. I learned from billionaires. He exhaled, relief moving through him like sunlight. Does this mean? It means I am staying in New York. For Chloe, she let the silence teach him one last lesson. For Chloe, she said first, then smiled. And for the man who signed potato instead of patience. He laughed, full and unguarded now. I was hoping for a more flattering memory. Earn one. He set down both mugs, crossed the space between them, and stopped close enough to ask without words. May I? He said softly. You may start with honesty. I love how you challenge me. Good start. I love how Chloe lights up when you enter a room. Still safe. I love you, Elena. The room became very still. She touched the front of his sweater where his heart was behaving recklessly. Took you long enough, Graham Whitmore. Then she kissed his cheek, warm and certain. That is all you get until you master full sentences in sign language. Cruel woman. Improving woman. A squeal erupted from the doorway. Chloe stood there with Mrs. Alvarez and Dana behind her like a cheering committee with no shame. We heard nothing, Dana said. but we inferred everything. 1 year later, the old Whitmore House restaurant reopened under a new name, Chloe House Center and Cafe. Downstairs served coffee, cookies, and jobs to people rebuilding their lives. Upstairs offered speech support, family classes, and communication therapy regardless of income. On the wall near the entrance hung a framed napkin crown. Graham, now occasionally seen in aprons and often seen smiling, burned pancakes every Sunday with consistency. Elena ran programs, trained staff, and still corrected his grammar for sport. Chloe, taller now and gloriously talkative when she wished, burst through the cafe doors one bright spring morning and shouted across the room, "Mom! Dad! You are late for my recital." Customers turned and smiled. Graham reached for Elena's hand automatically. She squeezed back. "You shocked everyone that first night," he said. She glanced at the bustling room, the laughing child, the man beside her. "No," she whispered. "Only the right people." Sometimes the richest home is simply the one where everyone is finally heard. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share this video, and let us know where you are watching from, and please subscribe to When He Chose Her channel. Your support helps us keep bringing you powerful, emotional stories about love, growth, and second chances. Hit the bell so you never miss a new story that might just change the way you see the world.